Okay, let's look at the second part of your study guide. Find the zeros of the following quadratics. The A quadratic, x squared minus 6x plus 5. Let's just factor that. Factors of positive 5 that add to give me a negative 6. That's negative, negative, 5, and 1. Set these both equal to 0 and solve. So what would make this factor equal 0, and what would make this factor equal 0? And so your answers are going to be 5 and 1. All right. On the B quadratic, let's move all our terms to the other side because I want to get this to be a positive x squared. So let's go ahead and move all those to the other side. And so we'll have x squared plus 12x plus 20. And let's find the zeros. So let's factor that. Factors of a positive 20 that add to give me 12. And that's going to be 10 and 2. And what would make both of these factors equal 0? So that's going to be x equals negative 10 and x equals negative 2. All right, and then on the C quadratic, A is greater than 1. And so if A is greater than 1, we're going to use that bottom-up method. And so let's multiply A and C together. And we'll get x squared minus x minus 90. Now let's find factors of negative 90 that add to give me negative 1. So positive and a negative. 10 and 9. The 10 is going to be negative, and the 9 is going to be positive. That way they add together to get that negative 1. And then I will divide by my original A, which was 5. And then we'll simplify both of those if they will. The first one won't, so I'll bring that 5 to the front. So one of my factors is, well, you could, this is what you could do. You can do it like that, or you can just say, since I'm finding my zeros, set both of these factors equal to 0. So what would make this factor equal 0? X equals negative 9 over 5. That's one of my answers. And what would make that one? That's x minus 2. So that would be x equals 2. So those are my two zeros on that one. All right, the third part, we're finding the quotients. We're doing long division. And so let's divide x minus 5 into 7x squared minus 31x minus 20. And so I want to say x goes into 7x squared how many times? And it goes 7x times. Get this away. Now I'll multiply 7x times both. 7x times x and 7x times negative 5. Gives me 7x squared, and 7x times negative 5 is negative 35x. Now we want to subtract. 7x squared minus 7x squared goes away. Negative 31x minus a negative 35x. That's going to give me a positive 4x because you're adding 35x when you do minus a negative. Bring down the negative 20 and do the process again. X goes into 4x 4 times. 4 times x is 4x. 4 times negative 5 is negative 20. Subtracting this, we're going to get 0 for a remainder. So that's my answer, my quotient. And the B part. B goes into 2b squared 2b times. multiply 2b times b, and 2b times 7, and subtract. These cancel out. 17b minus 14b gives me 3b. Bring down the 21. B goes into 3b 3 times. 3 times b is 3b. 3 times 7 is 21. Subtract. 0 remainder. Okay. The last one tells us that b plus 3 is a factor of this. That just means the remainder is 0. Use this information to completely factor 2b cubed plus 5b squared minus 4b minus 3. Alright, so if I know that b plus 3 is a factor, that means when we divide it, we'll have 0 for remainder, but let's divide it and see what's left. See what my quotient is. So b goes into 2b cubed 2b squared times. Multiplying gives me 2b cubed and a positive 6b squared. Subtract these. Cancel. 5b squared minus 6b squared is a negative 1b squared. Bring down the negative 4b. B times what gives me negative b squared? That's just negative b. Negative b squared. Negative 3b. Subtract. Negative b squared minus a negative b squared cancels. Negative 4b minus a negative 3b is adding a 3b. We're going to get negative b. Bring down the negative 3. And we should get a 0 for remainder when I finish. B goes into negative b negative 1 times. Negative 1 times b is negative b. Negative 1 times 3 is negative 3. Subtracting gives me that 0. Alright, so it says to completely factor. Well, I know b plus 3 times 2b squared minus b minus 1. Those are two factors, but we can go a little further. We can actually take this second factor here, we can factor that even further. And I'm going to do bottom up method with that one. So I know b plus 3 is a factor, but let's do bottom up with a second factor. Multiply 2 times negative 1 and rewrite it. And then factors b plus minus. That's going to be a negative 2, positive 1, divided by my original a of 2, and bring it to the front. This will simplify. That's 2b plus 1, and that's b minus 1. Okay, so completely factored now is b plus 3 times 2b plus 1 times b minus 1. That's your answer.